Good morning to you. Good morning to you. Good morning to you. Good morning, good morning, good morning to you. Good morning, good morning to you. Good morning, good morning to you. Good morning, good morning. Invite a friend or two. Good morning, good morning, good morning to you. All right, good morning, everyone. I hope that you all are certainly having a great and wonderful morning. Uh, I am feeling just a tad bit not myself, so you know what I do: a cap of apple cider vinegar, a cap of apple cider vinegar with the mother, some lemon, real lemonade, heat it, adding some water. Oh, yeah, that feels really good going down. So it is here. It is, I think, about 25 degrees here in the DC, Baltimore area. And I believe the temperature is going to continue to drop. So if you're in this area, I encourage you to bundle up. If you can avoid going outside, try to avoid going outside, as this weekend we're going to be getting into the snow. From my understanding, it's going to start Saturday and go through all the way through possibly Monday at this point. They were just saying Saturday and Sunday, but now they're saying possibly into Monday. So that means stay off the roads. That means try to leave your place of employment a little early today, because everybody's going to be out getting bread, getting water, getting milk. Yeah, so try to be safe. I did my stuff yesterday. Try to get all the supplies you think you might need, emergency things that you think you might need just in case your power goes out over the weekend. They're not expecting it to be a bad storm, so to speak, but they are expecting snow, which is going to keep you and your little ones inside. So have something for your children to do besides watch television while we're going through this. All right, just a couple of tips. If you own a home and you have to clear your own walkways, make sure you can get some of this. The I forget what they call it. It's like a salt solution where you can pre-salt your walkway and your driveway so that it's not too bad as the snow comes down. So there's a couple of things I have learned since I've lived here that you can do to kind of help prepare yourself for the snow. If you are a Life Nation partner, we have already sent out a notice because we do not want anyone trying to drive to a service. So I will be broadcasting on Sunday, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here. All right, we will do online streaming right here. So we don't want anybody trying to get to our Culpeper Hub location. The last time we went down and we got caught in the snow, in the snowstorm coming down, they did not properly clear the roads, and it was very, very dangerous as we made our way from Virginia back over to Maryland. So we wouldn't want anybody out in that because we would not want to be responsible for any sort of accident or injury that might occur. Therefore, we will be having online service only, and you can tune in at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll be continuing the series, yeah, Hebrews 2, Jesus our superior. We don't have a helicopter yet. No, no, prophet. We don't have that accommodation yet. But we are willing. If you're willing to fly us in somewhere to go minister, we'll do that. All right, provided it's not a snowstorm. Because again, we gotta, they will ground your flights anyway. Good morning, wonderful husband. So, today we're talking about healthy, wealthy, wise. And I did bring in another book. We may come back to this book occasionally because it's not mine. And it's called The Story of Food. The Story of Food. So, as long as I have it, I will read some things from it. I like books like, I am a history buff. I'm a history person. I like history. So whether it's the history of food or the history of the stars or it's a history of a person in the United States, it doesn't matter what kind of history it is. I love history. I like to read about history. I like to dig into facts and to know things that your average person might not know. All right. So anytime you get into a conversation with me, the conversation could go anywhere, right, Pastor Ben? Because we could talk about all sorts of subject matter. I like to be well versed in various subjects. So we're going to talk today about the story of food, and I'm just going to do some of the intro pieces to that. But we're also going to work on our wealth can't wait principles, and we're actually in the habit building section on wealth. And so we covered habit number 1, which was living your life by design. Habit number 2 today we're going to cover is making business decisions based on solid fundamentals. And then we're going to go over to the Entrepreneur's Playbook, which talks about strategies and principles as you become an entrepreneur. I love these because the principle 1 that we started with, which is find a marketplace challenge that needs to be solved or improved. We are still in this principle, so we're going to continue talking to you from this step. And then I think right after we talked about that, I actually found an article where somebody had solved a problem, right? They solved a problem using something that was already invented, and it had to do with gloves. I can't remember what specifically he did with the gloves, but it was innovative, and people were like, oh my God, this is a wonderful idea. Well, it was an idea that he already improved upon. He didn't go out and invent something entirely new. All right. So let us begin with the story of food. And I'll hold the book up again for those of you who want to screenshot it and see if it's in your local library. The History of Food, an illustrated history of everything we eat. An illustrated history of everything we eat. I think if you are a cook, if you are a chef, if you are a foodie, this is a good book for you to have in your personal library. I don't consider myself a chef. I do like to experiment with food, but I don't consider myself a chef per se. All right. So let's go into the introduction here. I like this image. I'm going to start out by showing you this is a traditional market in Nepal, and it says it harks back to the ancient ways of bartering your produce. So everybody shows up at this market with their food products, and you proceed to trade your goods as opposed to sell them. We might have to go back to that if this government shutdown continues. All right, so this serves as a function as old as the human species, providing food for hungry mouths. So as you can see in the image here, everybody shows up at the market with their food, all right? And you barter for what you want. So if you have grains and somebody else has bread, you decide what your equivalencies are, and you switch or you swap. And so every mouth gets fed. Gee, I wonder why America hadn't come up with that. Every mouth gets fed because everybody who comes to the market, maybe not everybody in your family comes, but you come with whatever your family produces, and then you swap and trade. And then by the time you go back home, you've got something that you need from the other people in your community, and everybody eats. Wow, what a genius idea, right? From prehistoric hunter gatherers to modern culinary superstars, food has occupied a prominent position in the human psyche. As a species, we depend upon food for survival, but how it is obtained, prepared, and consumed has shaped us as much as our quest for it has shaped plants, animals, and the environment. Over the course of human history, food has become a potent topic, assuming enormous social, environmental, and commercial significance. The production of food has evolved into a massive global enterprise, and for the majority of people in the developed world, a trip to the supermarket is all the effort required in order to obtain the calories and nutrients needed to survive. The ancient the ancient hunt for sustenance is mostly gone, but the quest for it is in our DNA. And our relationship with food remains as complex as it ever was. From the time early humans learned how to harness the power of wild foods and began to make the right tools for hunting and butchering, cultivation and domestication, the process gained peace, allowing them enough nourishment to not just survive, but to thrive. Researchers believe that between 2 million and 3.9 million years ago, a shift took place in the diet of early humans in Africa, which propelled them to exploit new sources of food and forced them into different environments as a consequence. When paleontologists examined the tooth enamel of several species of early humans found in Ethiopia, they discovered that some of them had added new types of plant food to their diet. These plants, such as tubers, succulents, cabbage, and maize or corn, were especially nutrient and energy dense, and this new source of food channeled more calories into their brain development. In the process, our taste receptors evolved to detect poison in plants, distinguishing between foods that tasted bitter and were deadly and those that tasted slightly less bitter and were nutritious, and others that tasted sweet and would provide a fast-acting energy boost. Food meant the difference between life and death, between a growing prosperous population and a struggling one, and it assumed great social, religious, and cultural significance. The quest to find, to hunt, and grow food forced people to cooperate to arrange society in such a way that it maximized food production. And to this day, researchers are still looking to maximize food production, but the way that they're doing it is by increasingly creating artificial food, all right? Which is not necessarily helping us. On a hunt, this meant that different members of the community assumed the specialist roles in order to ensure the best chances of a kill. Once herding and grain agriculture became established, more complex forms of organization and cooperation were required, pushing communities to innovate, invent, and become efficient not only at food production, but now they had to become efficient at food storing, food transporting, and food trading. A surplus of food also allowed more children to survive into adulthood, triggering a population explosion. Now, think about what they just said. A surplus of food allows more children to survive into adulthood, which creates a population explosion. So if I know that and I'm trying to control the population, then what am I going to do? I'm going to limit the amount of food that is available because That slows down how many children actually survive into adulthood, which in turn hinders population growth. All right? Then a subsistence existence gave way to a thriving society with many different aspects. Along with archaeological and anthropological finds such as cave paintings, utensils, bones, and chemical traces of foodstuffs, much of what anthropologists and historians know about early food production and consumption comes from a limited number of texts, such as early recipe books that were found and trade accounts. From their sources, we now know that our ancestors were deep sea fishing for tuna in Southeast Asia, for example, as well as making cheese in Poland and keeping bees in ancient Egypt. So, that is a little bit of the introduction here to this book. Next week, Lord willing, we'll come back and we'll talk about social and religious customs. We'll talk about the future of food, and then we'll get into the nuts. All right. I want to go now to Wealth Can't Wait, and I want to share with you our next habit, and then we're going to jump into the Entrepreneur's Playbook for the rest of our reading time today. Chapter 30, Habit 2. Make business decisions based on solid fundamentals. This is a habit of wealth. Albert Einstein said there is not the slightest indication that nuclear energy will ever be obtainable. It would mean that the atom would have to be shattered at will. Don't trust the experts. If you want to have some fun, pick up some business magazines from right before the October 1987 crash of our economy and read what the experts were saying about the future of the economy. Or pick up a 5-year-old issue of Forbes or Money magazine and look at the stock pick section at the back. Not many experts predicted major events or accurately picked stocks. Moody's, Standard & Poor's, and Fitch had rated many of the mortgage-backed securities as safe bets right up until they were nearly worthless. And what about medicine? At one time, not that long ago, experts recommended smoking for health reasons. Can you imagine? Throughout the 2016 presidential election season, experts thought that Donald Trump stood no chance. But if you're a regular, common, everyday person in America, you knew that Donald Trump had a chance, and you knew exactly why Donald Trump had a chance. In Donald Trump's, one of his very first speeches when he was competing against a whole slew of Republicans, Donald Trump said these words. He said, I supported each and every one of y'all campaigns on this panel. I gave all of y'all campaigns some money. In street language, that basically means I own y'all. That basically means I bought y'all. That basically means it's my turn now. That basically means I gave each and every one of you all on this panel, I supported your previous campaigns for office. I gave y'all some money, and y'all still couldn't get the job done to become president. So now that I'm in the race, y'all owe me. And from that debate, I knew that he was going to become the Republican nominee. Because you know why I knew? Not one Republican on that panel gave a rebuttal. Because they couldn't. And that was sad. But that was the reality. All right? So, translation in common language for at that time, translation was, I own you all, I bought you all. You all had a opportunity before me to try to run as president. You couldn't get the job done, so now I'm in the race. And let me be the nominee. I'm going to get it done. And he did. He used all kinds of tactics to get it done, but he got it done. All right. So Moody's ran a model, the same model which predicted the winner of every presidential race since Ronald Reagan, that had Hillary Clinton projected to win with 332 electoral votes, leaving Trump with 206. So, according to their political model that they had sketched out, they had Hillary Clinton as a shoe in. All right. What they were not counting on, all right, with Donald Trump supposedly having this very liberal past, what they were not counting on was the fact that Donald Trump was not going to play to the center, all right? He was not even going to play to the right. Donald Trump said, I'm not playing to the center because that's probably where Hillary is. And I'm not going to just play to the right because everybody knows I'm not a politician. I'm going to play all the way to the far right. I'm going to play to the people that feel not like they're not heard by the wealthy. That's who he played to. And that is actually most of white America. And that's why he won their votes. Okay. We know he did not win the popular vote, but whoever was working his campaign logistics understood election math, that there were certain states that he had to capture in order to win. And those were the states that Hillary Clinton chose not to go to. And here we are. So the winner of the 2016 election was Donald Trump with 306 electoral votes. Our point is simple. No one can predict what will happen in the future. You can extrapolate from the present, which is what most of the analysts at the time were not doing. They were not extrapolating from the present. They were extrapolating from their previous election models, not recognizing that this was a completely different kind of election and campaign that Donald Trump was running. All right. Had they extrapolated from the present time, they would have realized that there were enough people in America who were angry at the previous president that they wanted something completely the opposite of the previous president. So the previous president was black. He was well spoken, or he was intelligent speaking. I won't say that other word that everybody like to say. All right. And they felt like America was becoming too brown. Had they extrapolated from the present, they would have realized that Donald Trump had a very good chance of winning. You can make some general assumptions, but there are too many factors to consider. And all the experts that make predictions are making educated guesses. Our advice: you can, however, make your business decisions based on solid fundamentals as opposed to guesses about the future. We don't base our buying decisions on future appreciation. Instead, we look for stable investments that make sense now. Remember, this particular book is written by real estate gurus, okay? So he's talking in terms of real estate right now. He says they look for stable investments that make sense now. Does it make sense to invest in it now? Our advice to you is to do the same. Invest in things that will stand up if circumstances stay the same for a long time or they get worse. Have a plan that you know will create a predictable value add, and then go for it. Businesses move in cycles. Become aware of the business cycles in your industry. You've heard us say this before, and we're repeating it here because it's that important. For example, if you work for the federal government, you already know during the last administration, all right, I think this particular administration is actually trying to beat Obama's record because he competes against everything the previous president did. All right. So his shutdown may become the longest in history if he surpasses, and I think he's going to surpass it either today or Monday. If he surpasses Obama's record, it will become the longest government shutdown in history. So if you work for the federal government and you were in working for the federal government under the last presidential administration, then you already know there's a possibility of a shutdown that could drag on for as long as 3 weeks to a month or longer. So if you worked for the federal government during that administration, something should have rang in your mind that, gee, I saw what happened last time. I don't want to be in that predicament again. I know we have someone coming into office that is unreasonable. So let me go ahead and make sure things are set financially for me so that if something happens where they don't give me my paycheck or something goes whatever, I at least have something stored for maybe the next 2 to 3 months in case these people go AWOL with our government. And sure enough, here we are. Okay? So they tell you become aware of the business cycles in your industry. Right now, the last bubble that bust, I believe, was the dot-com bubble, right? The web-based, web design, website industry, the internet bubble busted. Okay? Then everybody came along and people were starting to do Bitcoin. And then countries started recognizing how much competition that Bitcoin could be to their financial system. So all of a sudden, you start seeing Bitcoin kind of drop off a little bit. All right. It'll probably bounce back because now that they did that for individuals trying to make money off Bitcoin, all of a sudden you now see other countries and banking industries trying to take advantage of what they saw going on with Bitcoin. So they're really probably trying to restructure it so that the major institutions can benefit from Bitcoin as well. And then they'll allow it to grow again. All right. Now we have what's called the coaching business, the coaching and consulting business. And I'm going to be honest with you, it is going to more than likely come to a bubble and bust. Why? Because so many people are entering the coaching, the coaching and consulting industry saying, hey, there's something I know I can make money doing it. All right. I know something about a field, I can make money doing it, which is why I always caution people to check the credentials on the people who say they are coaches and consultants. Do they have any degree in the area of which they are consulting? Do they, if they're a business coach or a business consultant, do they have a business? All right. If they're a trainer, do they have any background in education? If they're a life coach, do they have any background in counseling? All right. Check the backgrounds. Make sure that you are not being taken advantage of somebody who is just trying to make money in an industry, but really doesn't have the credentials or the experience to be in that industry. They're just there making money. And so a couple weeks ago, there was a huge scandal about a young lady. I won't say her name here, but she had, put together this quote unquote conference and retreat, and people were registering to go to her event. And then all of a sudden, all of a sudden the event fell through, and people began to call her a fraud because they weren't able to get their money back. So you have to be careful about what's happening in certain industries. All right. So becoming aware of the business cycle, while they vary enough to make it nearly impossible to determine the very top of the cycle when you should sell, or the very bottom of the cycle when you should buy, it can be easy to spot how hot or cold a market might be. For example, if real estate has gone up 10% a year for 5 years, you know that it could soon contract and fall again. Alternatively, if the market's been cold for a while and no one is buying and prices are down 20 to 30%, you know that things may well improve and plan your investments accordingly. So, for those out there who are now home searching, when you go on the sites like realtor.com or you go to zillow.com and you're looking for property, go all the way down to the bottom and it will tell you what the market is like in your area right now. I know in the DMV area, the market right now is reading cold, which means that, as they just told you, things will improve, so plan to invest accordingly. This would be a good time to invest in the DMV area because the market right now is cold. If the market was hot, it wouldn't be a good time to invest because, again, as they said, the market could soon contract and fall. Warren Buffett said, I will tell you how to become rich. Be fearful when others are greedy. Be greedy when others are fearful. Now, obviously, in biblical terms, we really don't encourage people to be greedy, but we get the point. Be your own expert. Buy real estate. Become an expert in real estate. Paying a seasoned home inspector $500 will tell you more about a house, a single target purchase, than you could ever know about a stock. A very good local realtor can reasonably predict what the sale price of a property would be after certain improvements, or what an apartment will rent for once it is renovated. With very little research, you can become an expert in real estate submarkets or micro markets. These markets are generally the size of a few neighborhoods, a smaller subsection of a city. Think about an area you know well. Then look at which parts are gentrifying. This is generally where there's value. Let me say that again because I keep saying it for all of the people who keep talking about the south side of Chicago, Detroit, South Florida, such as the Opelika, Liberty City areas, Baltimore, all right? You know, you see these places and they keep putting them, the media keeps putting them on, as horrible places, as crime-ridden places. They do that to make sure you don't come there. Why do they not want you to come there right now? Because if you go down to Baltimore City right now, there are rows and rows and rows of empty, abandoned brownstones, townhouses, whatever you want to call them. All right. There's empty rows and rows and rows of them. And guess what people are doing down there? They're buying them. Some are as low as $5,000. They're buying them. Some, I have a friend right now who's looking at one that is $55,000, and people go down there, they buy it for 55, they renovate it, and they flip it for 200,000. That's called the practice of gentrification. All right. So the media puts these places out there for a certain length of time and tells you how bad they are, how crime ridden they are. And I'm not saying that crime is not a problem, but I'm telling you the backstory of why these particular places are often put out in the media. All right. So while you all are saying, oh my God, it's so crime ridden there, I'm never going to Baltimore. They're like, and the investors are like, yeah, stay away. Stay away while we buy up all the property, because we have put it as a crime ridden place, we can now buy the property for dirt cheap because ain't nobody coming in here but us. We're going to renovate it, and then we're going to come back with the same media and we're going to tell you how much the crime has gone down, how the neighborhoods have been beautified, how they've become cleaner, and how, you and your gentrification buddies can come on in now. And they will have made their money. And all of the poor people and the historical significance of those places will have been wiped away. And the people who still have remained there through all of that, those will be the ones that people call the cops on. Because they was like, I thought you were gone. I think the same thing is happening in Oakland as well, all right, and some other places. So they're telling you that he says, look at which parts are gentrifying. This is by two white males. I'm gonna show you their pictures. They telling you, all right, that's who they are. They telling you what they do. I'm not making this up. Look at which parts are gentrifying. This is generally where there's value, regardless of what the big markets are doing. So these people look for the areas that are gentrifying. Do your homework. Verify what you hear from the so-called experts. Become your own expert and make value-based and informed real estate purchases. He's telling you that they look for the areas that are run down, that are being renovated. I know some cities now have kind of like buy back the block programs. There's some places where you can buy the property, I think, for like at $1, but you have to, I think you have to make an agreement that within a certain amount of time, I think maybe within a year, that you're going to actually finish and actually renovate the property. So there's all kinds of deals out there when you're talking renovation, gentrification. All right, we're moving on to the Entrepreneur's Playbook, and we're still on principle 1. Find a marketplace challenge that needs to be solved or improved. Real estate is a marketplace challenge that needs to be solved or improved. Housing for people needs to be solved or improved. All right. So we started out by saying that you want to not spend a lot of time trying to explain a product that you have. All right. If you are a business owner. We gave the example last time of the Polaroid camera and how it took a long time for the Polaroid camera to take off because they had to explain how a camera could develop its own film. Now everybody knows what a Polaroid is, or should, and Polaroid is actually making a comeback in sort of a semi-digital form of being able to spit out instant images either from your iPhone. I've seen some connections now where you have a little instant printer where if you take pictures by your phone, you can instantly print them out with this little instant printer. It's the similar thing as the Polaroid. They're just using your phone to do it. He says, second, it is a problem if your idea is a solution to no known problem. All right. And we talked about you may want to start a business journal or a business newspaper. If there's already a good business newspaper out there, it may be hard to sell your product because it's not a problem right now, right? There's not a desert when it concerns business newspapers. There are some really good ones out there, so you're not really solving a problem. Instead of trying to create a radically new product or service, it's always easier to start by trying to solve an existing problem. If you go down this route, and I recommend that you do, you will probably end up building off something that already exists. Many of my fellow professors at Babson College spend hours teaching students how to create a business plan. I don't spend a minute on it. It's not that I think planning is a waste of time. I believe it can be extremely valuable. It's just that having a detailed business plan can give you a false sense of security. If you are overly dependent on it, the first time you encounter something that you didn't expect, you're going to be at a loss. Instead of developing a detailed business plan, a far better approach is to do the minimum amount of planning that will get you underway and adjust your plan as you go. When I say all of this, someone asks, but don't I need a detailed business plan to know if I'm on to a big opportunity? The answer is no. The easiest way to get confirmation that you're on to a great idea is to explain your concept in what's called a rocket pitch. Some people call it an elevator pitch of 30 seconds or less, and then ask, is this something you would invest in? Now, I pitched an idea to someone recently and I said, is this something you would invest in? And they said, yeah, there's a lot of people that would invest in that. And so I'm still looking for someone who I can pitch an idea to that has to do with young people and education. So if you are in the investing business and you are looking for an idea that deals with young people in education, please email me at readshante@gmail.com. If you get some sort of positive response, you may have spotted a real opportunity. We will be talking more about this in the next principle. So, if you think about it, you'll realize that is exactly what the kid creators of the Mall Map app did. Maps have been around forever, and so have coupons. Their idea simply combined the two to solve a problem: finding items to purchase in a big box store and getting the best deal in the process. It is tempting to start with a blank piece of paper when you are just beginning to look for ideas. Don't. Instead, begin by searching for existing products and services that can be modified to solve a problem or improved. To put everything we just talked about into context, let me give you 4 rules. Rule number 1, for those of you who are taking notes and are entrepreneurs. Rule number 1, investigate what products are in the marketplace and make yours either better by being faster or more effective, etc. So, remember last time we talked about, because of the government shutdown, there would be people who would eventually be forced into entrepreneurship. Well, turns out one of the recent stories that has happened in our area is a pair of sisters called the Furlough Sisters, who started making, I think they made a cheesecake at first during the holidays, and somebody said, hey, you can actually sell these, they're so good. So they called themselves, they actually started their business, and they called themselves the Furlough Sisters. And they called their, I think the first cakes they made, they called them the Furlough Cake. So they're kind of taking the name of the government shutdown and using it for their company name. All right. Now that they're in the marketplace and they're making these cakes, they might want to start doing some market research. Like, okay, there are lots of cake businesses out here, right? There are lots of dessert businesses, period. What is going to make your dessert different from all of the other thousands of choices that I could choose from? Is it your price? Is it your speed? Is it your ingredients? What is it that you are offering that's different from everyone else? All right. And then capitalize on that difference. So he gives a proof that this works, this principle. One Sunday morning, Jack Grumet, my neighbor and the founder and owner of Joanne's Nut House, which sells cookies and indeed nuts, was driving along a main street in town and saw a long line of customers waiting to buy freshly baked bagels. The bagels came in over a dozen varieties. One of the main ingredients used was New York City water. Jack introduced this model nationwide and created the Manhattan Bagel Company, which became a New York Stock Exchange listed company. Rule number 2, when others see problems, you should look for opportunities. If you're going to satisfy a market need, you have to listen to the market. Sounds obvious, right? But that means you have to evolve if the market is telling you to, and that can be difficult. So let me put this in preacher terms. All right. Let's go back to what he said. If you're going to satisfy a market need, you have to listen to the market. Now, the market right now in the body of Christ says on-stream ministry is appealing, right? Put some hearts on the screen if you agree. The market right now is saying, if I can get everything I need out of a service, per se, the teaching, the atmosphere, the worship, and I can do that at my home in my pajamas, then what is the appeal now of going to a physical building? Some people are going to get upset because, well, they already have gotten upset because the market now is telling you that even if you do have a brick and mortar ministry, you also need to have an online presence. You should be either teaching, or you should be sharing something, or you should be live streaming your teaching sections of your service. Obviously not your whole service, because we've seen what has happened with that. But you should be live streaming something about your service, because the market is telling you that our communities and business is becoming more online oriented. Does that mean that you lose your salt? Does that mean that you compromise the truth to do it? No. But the market is showing you that more people are how can I say, are retreating from the brick and mortar setting, either because of work. There's all sorts of reasons why people are retreating. It's not just because, let's be clear, it's not just because of the atmosphere or the toxicity that can be found in a small number of ministries. There are other reasons why people are attracted to online ministry. So you can fight that and say, well, I'm never going to go on social media. I'm never going to get on Facebook. I'm never going to do Instagram. I'm never going to do Snapchat. I'm never going to do Twitter. I'm never going to do Periscope. You can do that. Or you can say, how can I use this tool to bring the gospel to a larger platform or to a larger audience? All right. So most people have spent a lot of time identifying market X. You raise money for it. You might have laid out a marketing plan. You might have figured out exactly what you need to do to make it a reality. And then all of a sudden, the market says that what you've laid out is not a good idea. It could be made substantially better, or it needs a variation. Can you change in that sort of situation? Stacy Madison did. Stacy and Mark Andrus thought they were onto something. They lived in New England, and on a visit to the West Coast, they noticed lines of people buying food from sidewalk vendors at lunchtime. Pitas and wraps were just becoming hot in the mid-1990s, and they thought if they could sell theirs in the heart of the Boston financial district at lunchtime, that they could probably make a decent living. They were right. On their first day, they quickly sold out. It was clear that they had underestimated the demand for their pitas and wraps. When they got the system down, they routinely made and sold 100 sandwiches an hour. There were always 30 to 40 people queued up, but unfortunately, some were not willing to wait. They got out of line and walked away. There was no telling how many people never joined the line in the first place. To deal with the problem of long lines and some unhappy customers, every night, Stacy and Mark took the extra pita bread, dusted it with cinnamon sugar or Parmesan and garlic, chopped it into chip-sized wedgies, and baked it. Then the next day, Mark and Stacy began handing out the chips to the people waiting in line, thanking them for their patience. Soon, customers showed up specifically asking for the crispy, low-fat chips. This led to selling their pita chips first from the truck and soon after in retail stores. So, they could have just kept selling their pita sandwiches, all right? Or they could have recognized, which they did, they recognized the market demand moved from their sandwiches to the chips. That was just kind of like an off-the-cuff idea to please people who were waiting in line. The demand for those grew over the sandwiches. So do you still go with the sandwiches at the truck, right? Or do you go with the chips that you can now sell nationwide? Flash forward 10 years. The bad news is that Mark and Stacy got divorced. The good news is that Stacy's Chips became a $60 million business. At that point, PepsiCo owner of Frito-Lay promptly bought it for what is believed to be approximately one-time sales or 60 million and hired Stacy as a consultant. Got it? All right. Rule number 3, and we are almost done. We have one more rule after this. Rule number 3, don't give customers what they say they want, give them what they need. Again, don't give customers what they say they want, give them what they need. Steve Jobs, the co-founder of Apple, was a master at this. Walter Isaacson's 700-page biography of Jobs, which is simply called Steve Jobs, should be required reading in every entrepreneurship class because it contains many examples of products Jobs created that people didn't know they needed. No one really knew they wanted a new kind of cell phone or a different kind of way to buy and store music until Jobs offered them the iPhone and iTunes. Rule number 4. This is a principle that I use. Utilize the Pareto 80-20 rule. And I learned this in a Sunday school course geared toward entrepreneurs, taught by my former pastors, who are still my spiritual parents. Utilize the Pareto rule. You've probably heard of the 80-20 rule, which is otherwise known as the Pareto principle, named after Italian economist Vilfredo Pareto. In a business context, the 80-20 principle is pretty simple. Approximately 80% of a company's revenue or profit comes directly from 20% of its resources, either product lines, customers, and even people. The principle has been supported by numerous studies with the same gut-wrenching conclusion. It is true. I'll say the principle again, all right? This is where the phrase 20% of the people usually do 80% of the work. This is also true in ministry. 20% of the people are usually doing 80% of the work. Approximately 80% of a company's revenue or profit comes directly from 20% of its resources. Proof that this works. As a teenager, Joe Ventresca toiled alongside his father, a mason, as he worked with brick and stone to construct homes and office buildings. When Joe was 15, he began to notice the real estate agents who arrived at the construction sites were well dressed and driving expensive cars. These men and women made a lot more money than his father without engaging in the physical labor. After college, Joe worked as a realtor and then decided to start his own real estate firm. His new office comprised 10 agents, and he quickly learned that the 80-20 rule applied to real estate agents as well. 2 of his employees were hard workers, 3 were okay, and 5 were just getting by. Not surprisingly, the 2 hard workers generated 80% of the profits of his business. Joe was frustrated. He put in long hours, was dedicated to serving his clients, and was committed to becoming the best. He couldn't understand why 8 of his 10 employees did not share these traits. By chance, Joe had a meeting with a real estate agent from a different agency and learned the following techniques that worked for them. Agents who generated a listing got to have their name and phone number on for the sale sign that was put outside the home. People seeing the sign who were interested would call them and not the real estate main number. If people called the main number, the listing agent would split the potential commission with the person who handled the call. Newspaper ads worked the same way. If you signed up a client, your name was listed as the person to contact in the ad. In exchange for paying a management fee and a share of the monthly overhead, agents kept a minimum proportion of their commission. So, I want you to think about these things as we leave this chapter. 5 takeaways. Number 1, don't just begin with an idea. Start your search by identifying a large market need. I have identified a large market need. I'm just trying to pitch my idea to the right person. I don't want to start the idea. I just want to pitch it and sell it and let them have it. Number two, make sure you are committed to it. Sure, the idea of mass produced flying jetpacks is appealing, but if you don't have a technology background or it's not something you want to devote most of your life to in the near future, it is better to move on to something else or sell the idea. If you're not truly committed to what you're doing, it'll be much more difficult to raise money that you need to find ways to overcome the hurdles you might face. Number three, make sure you are confident about the opportunity. There are very few guarantees in life, and the success of a new venture is never going to be listed among them. Still, you want to be as certain as you can be going into it that you have identified a significant market need. Four, is the market need sustainable? What can you imagine that might happen to put you out of business? Changes in technology, the entrance of a larger competitor determined to steal your sales? How are you going to protect yourself today to keep that from happening? And five, what is your contingency plan if the worst happens? All right. So, this has been another episode of Daring Dialogues, and I have been your host today, Shantae Charles. I hope that I have shared something today to get you thinking about your path to entrepreneurship. If you aren't on the path to entrepreneurship, some of these are just good business principles and good business takeaways for building a wealth mindset. Remember, light is the most daring opposition to darkness, so please go out today and be light. Remember, you're never too old to use your mind and to think differently. Take care and God bless. Have a safe weekend. For those of you who want to join us on Sunday, we'll be back here at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you, ladies, for tuning in on YouTube. Have a wonderful day and